everybody. Welcome back to my channel. Thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Dana Trippiana, and I cover infamous gangsters in a true crime-like format. My show, Mob Times, comes out on Tuesdays, and this is part 5 of OJ Simpson. When I started recording part 4, I was adamant I was going to get it done all in one part, and that was that. I was absolutely, positively not going to make another part. But I had 3 hours of recording, and 3 hours of recording takes like 6 hours to make, and I still hadn't finished. So realistically speaking, I could not do it. So this is part 5. I hope you guys wanted this. I hope you're really into it. I really do, because I'm super excited to finish this series up. I always get like this, like I got like this with Angelo Leonardo. I always get like this where it's the end of the series and I'm just so ready for it to be over. And I was so excited to get into it, but now I just want it to be over. I just want to move on. I'm done. I'm done with OJ Simpson. But we have to do this last part. We have to. It's absolutely imperative. I cannot not go over what I truly think happened. So we got to go over this. So let's go ahead and get into it. I could literally spend hours going through every single theory and every single thing related to every single theory. I don't want to do that, okay? So here's what I want to do. I want to go over, I'm just going to tell you guys right now. What I believe happened is that OJ and Charles Ehrlich, I think that they killed Nicole and Ron. And I don't think that this was OJ's first attempt to kill her. The story from Wasz seems so far-fetched. It seems like a big conspiracy theory, but it lines up. Everything lines up. Everything is confirmed and on paper and like real life. This shit is not just some like offhanded, maybe, could be. No, this shit really happened. It's documented, and I think he wanted to have it done 6 months earlier, and he tried, but it failed with Wasz, and then because Wasz got arrested and wasn't around anymore, he ended up doing it with Charlie. I'm going to say that I believe that, and the reason that I believe it is because I've always been a big proponent of when somebody tells you who they are, believe them. I've always had that theory when it comes to relationships, when it comes to anything really. Like if somebody's trying to tell you about themselves, believe them. And OJ told us about this. OJ told us he killed Nicole with Charlie. As I said previously, I've said it multiple times, I feel like I'm pretty certain that this is what happened. But my whole aim in doing this whole episode was to have you guys tell me, no, you're wrong, it was actually this person, and to cite my arguments. So the story starts with OJ and Rob Kardashian hiring William Wasz. Wasz ends up getting arrested. He goes to jail. This was the catalyst. This right here, this plot, to have Wasz stalk, harass, and then eventually the plan was to have Wasz kill Nicole. And I think that that's the catalyst for what would later come to be. So let's talk for a minute about where the theory that Rob Kardashian hired people to kill Nicole came from. Bill Hodgman, the director of special operations at the Los Angeles DA's office, talked about a hitman that Marcia Clark and the other prosecutors are well aware of, and they've been well aware. They were well aware of it during the trial, but it was just inconvenient to try to prove that there was more than one person. And there was only one person involved in this whole thing that was a pro athlete, millionaire, and just deserving of an entire trial that would come to be known as the trial of the century and have every minute of it televised and blah, 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 blah. So, Bill Hodgman, employee at the DA's office, he goes and talks to Joseph Bosco, an investigative journalist who spent 18 months researching Bill Wasz and whether or not Rob Kardashian hired Bill Wasz to kill Nicole. Now, apparently, the police department stopped investigating anything to do with this because Marcia Clark, the prosecutor, ordered the police department to stop investigating this, to stop looking at it, stop bringing it up. She didn't want this mentioned at all. We all know that OJ was found not guilty at the criminal trial, but he was found liable at the civil trial. And we know that a large part of that is because the burden of proof is very different. With criminal, you need to have beyond a shadow of a doubt, beyond reasonable doubt, whatever. At a civil trial, all you need is 51%. But another huge difference between the criminal and the civil trial is that at the criminal trial, Marcia Clark insisted on only arguing that it was OJ and only OJ, but at the civil trial, Ron Goldman's parents argued that there was an accomplice, that OJ had somebody with him and they did this together. And that's the only time that we ever had any kind of conviction, because it just makes sense that there was somebody else there. Bill Wasz has never actually fully confessed. The LAPD and everybody that's familiar with the case is convinced that Wasz was hired by Robert Kardashian to trail Nicole. He was told when, where, and how to steal Paula Barbieri's car, and the end game was to hire him to kill Nicole. Now, even though law enforcement was ordered to stop looking into this, that doesn't mean that the media was. Now, remember I said that Marcia Clark went to great lengths and would lie to the police, to the media. People would ask her about Bill Wasz, like, wait, why are you not bringing up the fact that somebody was arrested in OJ's girlfriend's car 6 months ago stalking Nicole, and he has proof. That notebook had every single movement that Nicole made. Marcia Clark came out and she was like, well, that's a lie. That doesn't really exist. Bill Wasz was sitting in his prison cell and he fabricated this notebook, and then he came out and said, oh look, I was doing this, but he made that notebook while he was in prison. That is the easiest thing to disprove ever, because that notebook had been sitting in police custody for 6 months. It eventually did come out that that notebook was sitting in police custody. There's zero way that Bill Wasz could have fabricated this notebook. This notebook existed. Whether it was for OJ, whether it was just to watch her, whether it was to eventually kill her, regardless, he was stalking Nicole in Paula Barbieri's car. But Marcia Clark claims that's not true. Bill Wasz just fabricated the story. He fabricated the notebook. He made it all up. How could he possibly know to jot all of this stuff about Nicole down, put it in police custody, have it sitting in police custody, and then 4 months later that Nicole would be killed? It just doesn't make any sense. It's not a conspiracy theory. Wasz really stole Barbieri's truck. He really followed Nicole around. He really had this notebook. Like, this is not a conspiracy theory. The only part of it that's could be considered a conspiracy theory was that he had been hired to kill her. But the rest of it, it's not a theory. It's true. It's fact. Now, this theory really intrigued the LAPD officers. Not the LAPD as a whole, because they had been told by Marcia Clark that they weren't allowed to investigate, but the individual officers were super intrigued. At the very least, it piqued their interest. When he was approached about Wasz and his possible connection to the murders, Hodgman said, "It's always intrigued me. The same guy who steals Paula's car also keeps a surveillance log of Nicole 6 months before she's murdered. What are the odds of that being a coincidence? If my office paid my time, or I could take a paid leave of absence, I would devote all of my time to a thorough investigation of Wasz and his notebook." And that's the director of special operations at the Los Angeles DA's office. So don't tell me that this isn't true. These people aren't just making this shit up. When a CNN reporter, Robert Vito, found out about this story, he scheduled an interview with Wasz, and it was televised in October of 1994. In that interview, Wasz sits down with Vito, and he tells Vito that the same people that had him steal Paula Barbieri's car asked him to follow Nicole Simpson with the intention of knowing who she was seeing, who she was meeting. Joseph Bosco, another investigative journalist, spent years investigating this and went to weekly meetings in the prison with Wasz to ask him and talk to him and figure out what the hell is going on. So Bosco had a conversation with a reporter, and he had this conversation with her off the record. And she took that off the record conversation and wrote an article about it. And in that article, she says that Bosco said that Wasz had been hired by a very close associate of OJ Simpson's to follow and then shoot Nicole for $15,000 in 2 installments. According to Bosco, he reneged on the deal because he ended up getting arrested when he was caught with Polo Barbieri's stolen car. So now Bosco is sitting here and he's like, this is the craziest thing ever. Why is nobody looking into this? Why is nobody paying attention to this? So he's not getting anywhere on his own. He decides to approach Time magazine, who took a really deep interest in this story. Though the article was never officially released, Bosco works with Time magazine. They put together this like slam dunk of an article. This is going to be the end-all be-all, no questions asked, the craziest article ever. The article was pulled 10 minutes before it was supposed to go to press in 1998 because a bunch of people attacked Time magazine. Pretty much, Robert Kardashian had his legal team attack Time magazine, and then the prosecutor's office also attacked Time magazine because, like, that's a really bad look for the prosecutors that they knew this was going on and hid it. So everybody goes after Time magazine, and just as they're about to put this article out to print, it gets pulled 10 minutes before it's supposed to go out. Even though this article never officially went to print, this article talks a lot about the relationship between Robert Kardashian and OJ Simpson. They uncovered a bunch of businesses that Robert Kardashian and OJ Simpson had together. These businesses had fictitious business names that were things like R&R, such as like R&R Entertainment, R&R Leisure, like stuff like that, just R&R businesses. And these businesses would be registered to Simpson and Kardashian, and they would have non-existent agents and partners with non-existent phone numbers and addresses. Mainly, these companies were pornographic film production companies, pornographic film distribution companies, sports gambling companies, all kinds of just like lewd businesses that are just not exactly legit. So Wasz was working with Time magazine to get this story out. And it seems like when the Time magazine article got pulled and they decided that they weren't going to put it out because Rob Kardashian and the prosecution, everybody starts attacking them, they pull the article. When Wasz realizes that this article is not going out, he has his attorney initiate contact with the DA's office. An anonymous email is written to Curtis A. Hazel, the DA in Los Angeles. I'm just going to read the proffer to you because it's kind of stupid to sit here and try to like summarize it. I'm just going to go fast. I'll have it on the screen. If you want to slow it down and read it, you can. If you're okay with fast reading, we're good. The proffer starts off by saying, "Pursuant to your request, I would like to make an attorney proffer for your consideration. It is my understanding, based on conversation with you, that you might be interested in information my client could provide in regards to a solicitation to commit murder of Nicole Simpson Brown by Robert Kardashian." In the fall of 1993, Bill Wasz came into contact with Polo Barbieri, Robert Kardashian, and OJ Simpson. Just before the new year, Robert Kardashian met with Wasz in his home in Encino and offered him an assignment. The purpose was to follow Nicole and take pictures of her with any men whom she might meet with romantically. The surveillance of Nicole took place on January 6th and 7th, 1994. The information was documented in a notebook. The notebook is currently in the custody of the LAPD. The 3 phone numbers in the book belong to OJ, Kardashian, and Barbieri. On about January 14th, Bill Wasz met Robert Kardashian again in his Encino home. At this meeting, Kardashian offered Wasz $15,000 if he would kill Nicole with a .25 caliber bullet to the head. Robert Kardashian also told Wasz he was to steal Polo Barbieri's car and use it during the murder. The murder was to take place at the Rockingham estate and not at Nicole Simpson's home on Gretna Green. On January 24th at approximately 10 a.m., Kardashian called Wasz at his home at the Saharan Motel on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood. Kardashian told Wasz to steal Barbieri's car from a parking garage in Beverly Hills between 3 and 4 o'clock while she was having her hair done. After Wasz stole Barbieri's car, he drove to the mall in West Valley where he met Kardashian. While at the mall, Wasz took an envelope containing $7,500, which was to be partial payment for the killing. If you desire to interview my client, please contact me. When Wasz realized that the Time magazine article was not going to be printed, he had his attorney forward a proffer that had been between his attorney and the DA's office, and the proffer was forwarded to a bunch of journalists in Los Angeles. It seems like the journalists that this proffer was forwarded to are journalists that are kind of not exactly like CNN level journalists, more like the Inquirer level journalists. one of the journalists on the list, his name was Robert Sterling, he goes and he puts it out there, including the emails that this proffer was sent to, and puts the actual email out there. The first person on the list is Matt Drudge, and then him, Robert Sterling, and I don't know who the rest of them are. I'm just going to read off the emails. I. Goddard at erolls.com, J. Neal at loop.com, the_sage at larryelder.com, David at talkusa.com, and editor at wired.com. Now, this was an official attorney proffer, and it proved that Wasz's lawyer, Lawrence Longo, and Curtis Hazel had been talking for a long time, and that it had already been actually disclosed to the DA's office, who chose not to follow up on the lead that Wasz had been hired to kill Nicole. And according to the sender, that's why it was an anonymous email that was sent, and nobody claimed to be the person that sent it. The letter was confirmed to be authentic, but Wasz's attorney, Longo, claimed that he was unaware of the letter. But it did get mailed to his office, and it was regarding earlier communication between him and the DA. And the letter was sent after the two had reached a verbal agreement. The email was sent on April 22nd, 1998. On April 23rd, 1998, David Bresnahan, an investigative reporter for WorldNet Daily, reported on the proffer letter in an article titled New Evidence of Plot to Kill Nicole Brown Simpson. On May 12th, 2 weeks later, Bresnahan wrote an article titled Still No Interview for OJ Witness. That article claimed that Kardashian blamed Simpson for the leak and is now very spooked. The whole time that this is going on, Bosco is claiming that there is a lot of corroborating evidence to back all of this up, including eyewitnesses. Bresnahan headed to jail to have an official sit-down with Wasz. The article was released on May 2nd, 10 days later, and it was titled Interview with a Hitman. During the interview, Wasz backed up that everything that was said in the proffer was true. He confirmed that he had an agreement with Kardashian to kill Nicole, that he had been paid $7,500 from him, that Kardashian had extensive organized crime activities, and that the story was being suppressed by everybody. He also confirmed that every aspect of the story was backed up, and that there was eyewitnesses to the meeting who also saw Kardashian hand him an envelope full of cash. Joseph Bosco, the investigative journalist, is quoted as saying, "Every aspect of the story is backed up. In other words, it can be shown that Wasz did do business with Kardashian. He did sell them cocaine. They did meet at the Roxbury. He did the surveillance of Nicole Brown Simpson on January 6th and 7th, 1994. There's a witness to this. He did turn over 2 rolls of undeveloped film to Robert Kardashian, taking an envelope with cash in it. There's proof of that. He did move into the Saharan Motel after being given this assignment to steal Paula Barbieri's car. We have those records. We have the phone records." Wasz says that he went public with this because he believed it's his only protection from being silenced by officials who want to suppress the case, and alleged that there have been several attempts on his life since the arrest. There was an 11-part investigative series that was published in December of 1998, and they talked to Wasz a little bit, and he kind of goes more into detail about everything that he claimed. When Wasz was asked about why he thought the drug use of both OJ and Nicole was left out of the trial, he said, "When no mention of it came out in trial, I was sort of shocked that they would disregard such an important factor. Important because in order to understand what was going on, you have to equate the reality of the situation and not glorify the cause of battered women. Granted, it is a problem in America, but one cannot exclude what brought on those tirades. Both were at fault, and I heard on many occasions that she swung first. Not to condone him, but 2 people doing coke and one swings on the other, well, the other's actions will be quite predictable." He also goes on to claim that Kardashian had an affair with Nicole, which is why he was more than happy to get involved in the investigation into who Nicole was fucking and what she was doing. According to Wasz, Kardashian's affair with Nicole, as well as his knowledge that she knew everything about the business that he and OJ were involved in, including the illegal activities, and the fact that he was pissed that she was having an affair with some random dudes while OJ paid her $35,000 a month in child support, led Kardashian to saying that Nicole was a major deficit. According to him, there was a plan in place to leverage the public sympathy that would befall OJ Simpson once his wife was killed. And she was his wife at the time. They were still together. Nicole had moved out. They were like kind of separated, but she had even said that they were still having sex. And she said that she would buy things around the house that he liked. They were still very much so in their on-again portion of their on-again, off-again romance. He talks about the fictitious DBAs that Simpson and Kardashian had set up. He says that Kardashian told him about his involvement with the Russian mafia. Kardashian even told him that he leased his home from some Russian mobster named Sigalov. Or his and Simpson's use of the companies to wash assets or their involvement in a purported sports betting ring. Now, that's kind of interesting to note that Kardashian is talking about his involvement in a sports betting ring because Joey Ippolito was arrested for his involvement in a sports betting ring. There's a whole bunch of information that goes into how Joey Ippolito was like the biggest sports bettor in Los Angeles, and he was on trial for it, and the Los Angeles Times, which is obviously a really legit publication, had people that were like covering the entire thing, but never one time ever mentioned him by name. And that there was another publication that did mention him by name, but then they went out of business like a day and a half later. And then on top of that, there was another person that was making this like pamphlet that had a lot of stuff about him in it. And as it was being printed, every single window in the entire factory was shot out. So Joey Ippolito's got a lot of pull in Los Angeles, and he is undoubtedly the biggest sports gambler in the town. And the FBI knows it, and they're okay with it. So the fact that we're talking about Kardashian, and then we're going to talk about Joey Ippolito, it tracks. It makes sense. Wasz says that Kardashian had a plan, and it included Barbieri's stolen car, a .25 caliber gun because it was a ladies' gun, and the murder being carried out while Simpson was on an airplane. This was all going to be carried out before February. Wasz says that shortly after setting this plan up, he realized that Kardashian was setting him up to be the patsy in Nicole's murder. Like, he was going to do this, and then he was going to go to jail for it. And to his credit, that does make sense. Kardashian is running around saying that he does business with the Russian mob, notoriously a savage group of people who have no qualms offing Nicole. So why hire Wasz in the first place? Why would Wasz be the one that's supposed to kill Nicole and not one of the untraceable Russian mafiosi? He started thinking that Kardashian had Wasz steal Barbieri's car so Kardashian could convince him that Barbieri was the one being set up as a patsy, but it doesn't make any sense because when Wasz initially met Kardashian, he met him with OJ and Barbieri. So how could that possibly be? How could you be setting up somebody that sat down and agreed to this? It just doesn't make sense. According to Wasz, when he came to the realization that he was being set up as the patsy, he turned against Kardashian. He says that the meeting was set up in the parking lot of a mall for him to receive the payment from Kardashian for the hit, but by then he was over it. He was done. So instead of even pretending to carry out this hit, he put the gun to Kardashian's head, stole the envelope of cash, and got started on a week-long crime spree that culminated in him getting caught in Barbieri's stolen car. And that is true. He carried out 4 robberies during the time that he had Barbieri's car. And it would be so easy to believe that Wasz is just this crazy dude that's just making up these crazy stories if there wasn't eyewitnesses to this meeting. If there wasn't credit card proof that the 3 of these people that Wasz says that he had a meeting with were at the bar at the same time. If people didn't see the group sitting together, like, it can't just be made up. Okay, guys, I'm so sorry, but I have to put you on hold, and I have to throw my hair up. My hair is curled, and I'm just breaking the crap out of it by not putting it in a bun or something, because I keep trying to, like, curl it and keep it curled and, like, halfway decent looking. But as you can see, it's a whole frizzy mess. It needs to go in a bun. I will be right back. And when I come back, I'm going to have a bun in my hair. Alrighty, I'm back. Sorry about the delay, but I needed to. I couldn't do my hair anymore. So we're here. Okay, so I really wanted to go over something that I have searched high and low, and I don't know why, but this one fact just bothers me so much. I think about it a lot. So I want to talk to you guys about it and just kind of work it out, you know? Maybe somebody will have some good insight, or maybe I'll just work through my own thoughts. So on December 5th, 2001, Simpson's home was searched by DEA agents. And that's kind of interesting because it's less than 2 years after another famous international ecstasy drug ring was busted. The one run by Sammy the Bull Gravano in Arizona, where he and his whole family were arrested, and Sammy got that 20-year jail sentence that led to him spending such a huge amount of time in jail. Now, I searched high and low for any information about this, but there's nothing. Like, literally zero, which is so weird on its own. Like, you always kind of think that you're unique, but like TikTok has taught me I'm not. I don't have any original thoughts. So 99% of the time, when you have an issue that you want to look into, there's going to be something on Google about it, especially something pertaining to someone as big as OJ Simpson. You can usually find a conspiracy theory behind everything. So it's super weird that nobody has ever even mentioned this online. Unfortunately, according to the internet, OJ Simpson is the only human being on the planet that Gravano did not testify against, so I can't confirm it, and I don't see anybody else speaking on it, so there's no proof, but I don't believe in coincidences, and I don't think there's any way that Sammy the Bull is arrested. He's notoriously the biggest rat on the planet. And then 2 years later, OJ Simpson has his house completely ransacked by the DEA, and they tell him that it's because he's involved in an international ecstasy club drug ring. It's extra weird because Sammy belonged to the Gambino family. He was the underboss, which is how he had enough power to take down John Gotti, the boss of the Gambino family and the Teflon Don. The same family that it was claimed that the 4 dudes came from that killed Nicole on behalf of OJ. Remember the theory that we talked about before, where OJ owed the Gambino family money and he paid them extra to have Nicole killed? Yeah, so it's weird that conspiracy has a connection to the Gambino family, and then 2 years later, he's arrested for the same exact charge that Sammy the Bull Gravano was arrested for 2 years earlier. And it's even weirder that nobody has put these dots together. I don't know how. How has nobody thought of that? How has nobody talked about this? I know that by the time Sammy was caught for the ecstasy ring, he was very much not a Gambino anymore. Soldiers in the Gambino family were going to jail for trying to kill his ass. But if OJ knew Sammy from his time in the Gambino family, is it that far of a stretch to assume that he may have collaborated on this? The FBI doesn't just carry out searches for no good reason. There had to be some evidence that Simpson was involved in this international ecstasy ring in order for the FBI to get the warrants to search his house. And I just want to know if the two cases are related. I don't think it would change anything. It wouldn't strengthen my resolve if it came out that, yes, Sammy the Bull ratted on OJ and that's how OJ got his house searched. I don't think that that would oh, well, see, because that happened, it must mean that he had 4 Gambinos killed. I don't think that, but I do think that that's an interesting little fact, and I would love to know the answer to it. I don't know the answer, and it's like the question that I have of if Sarah J. Maas is related to Peter Maas, the famous mob author. I have no idea. I've looked high and low. I can't find it. It doesn't do anything for my life if I know one way or the other. I just want to know, because this is the kind of shit that keeps me up at night, unanswered questions. I don't do well with unanswered questions, okay? So I don't know. If you just so happen to know the answer to that question, I would really appreciate if you let me know. Maybe it's somewhere on the internet that I'm just not seeing. And if you know, let me know. I'd appreciate it, just to settle my own curiosity. I'm also pretty sure that the FBI wasn't even claiming that he was this big time drug dealer. I'm almost positive 3 high-ranking members of the drug ring told the DEA that they chilled with Simpson and sold him ecstasy and coke regularly, and that's what led the DEA to go and search Simpson's house. In my head, I'm 100% certain that it was Sammy the Bull that told them that. But I don't know. I'm the only one who thinks it, I guess. I don't know. So that's what the FBI used as their reasoning to get the warrants to search his house. So follow my train of thought here. Sammy the Bull is arrested along with his family. He gets 20 years in prison, and he does those 20 years, unlike when he copped out and ratted out every single mafia member in the world and took down the entire American mafia because he didn't want to go to jail. This time, he doesn't do that. He actually does the 20 years. So because of that, everybody is kind of thinking he he couldn't have ratted this time, because if he had ratted, why would he have gone to jail? He didn't go to jail the first time. I think he did like a year or something the first time, even though he was convicted of taking part in 19 murders. He did not go to jail. So if he ratted on OJ, why would he have done 20 years in jail? It just doesn't make sense, right? Right? Wrong. What they forget is that his whole family went down with him. His wife, Deborah, his son, Gerard, and his daughter, Karen, all pled guilty to charges. And Gerard got hit with extra charges. He pled guilty to illegally conducting an enterprise and offering to sell and transport dangerous drugs. Gerard was sentenced to 9 years in prison, but Deborah and Karen got off with a slap on the wrist. But what if the family got off so light? Like Karen and Deborah, they barely got anything. I'm pretty sure Karen got probation. And what if that's because Sammy the Bull gave the FBI information, say, on the person that the cops have wanted to take down more than any other person in America, OJ Simpson? I don't know. It seems plausible to me. It's also interesting to think about the fact that most likely the cops that were searching OJ Simpson's house, they went into this aiming to kill two birds with one stone. Take down the two most notorious criminals probably ever who got off for their crimes and didn't go to jail. They could take these charges and take them both down in one beautifully packaged throat punch and put these two criminals back in jail where they should have been all along. Who cares if the charges are fake? And again, even if it was confirmed that this was true, like even if Sammy the Bull came out and said, like, yeah, I was the reason that OJ Simpson had his house searched by the DEA, it wouldn't mean anything. It's not like it would be like, oh yeah, look, that proves that I don't think the four Gambino soldiers did kill Nicole. So it wouldn't mean anything. But it's still something I want to know. Like, it's just too much of a coincidence. Especially since the DEA cited that people had disclosed to them that OJ Simpson was involved in this. So Sammy the Bull is arrested, and then 2 years later, OJ Simpson has his house searched because somebody that was high up in an ecstasy drug ring said that he was involved. It's just too perfect. So now we're getting to the last theory, and the theory that I truly believe is what happened. This entire time I've been telling you guys about theories that everybody else has had, what everybody else thinks, what everybody else is convinced happened. Now we're going to go over what I personally think happened. And in the last episode, I said, I think it was the American Mafia, and that may just be because of who I am, and obviously I have a connection with the Mafia, I have an interest in the Mafia, and that may be why I think that. I personally don't think that there was 4 Gambino soldiers that came to Nicole's house. I don't believe that. But I do believe that it happened because of the Mafia. I do believe that there's a reason that OJ and Sammy the Bull Gravano knew each other. And I also believe it has a lot to do with why OJ kept coming out after the murder and kind of insinuating that he did it and trying to tell the story without getting himself put in jail. Because he tried. Over and over and over again, OJ tried to tell us what happened. He tried to tell us that he did kill her. And he tried to tell us why and who was there and what happened. And I think the only reason that he never came out and actually said, hey, I killed her and I did this and that, is because he knew that the Mafia would go and take out everybody that he knows and loves if he were to open his mouth. So let's talk about what I personally think happened. And the first major player in this theory is a man named Charlie. If the name Charlie sounds familiar, it's because there was a Charlie that was arrested with OJ for the robbery, the one that landed him in jail for 9 years with a 33-year sentence. And I'm not the only person that believes this theory. There's a lot of people that believe this theory. And on top of that, there's a lot of physical and circumstantial and all kinds of evidence that backs up that this theory is probably what happened. So if we're to believe this theory, let me take you through the beginning of the night of June 12th, 1994. Charlie shows up at OJ's house, and he lets him know that he's there on business. Now, following this theory, there's a lot of squabbling about, whether the debt that OJ has is real or imagined, whether it's extortion or trying to collect on a debt. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. Whether the debt is real and OJ ran it up, whether the debt is real and Nicole and Faye ran it up, or whether Joey Ippolito is just extorting the crap out of OJ and there never was a debt in the first place, it doesn't really make a difference. At the end of the day, Charlie shows up at OJ's house and he tells him, hey, we have this debt. Charlie works for a man named Joey Ippolito. We talked about him a lot in the prior episode. Joey is an associate of the DeCavalcante family. He's a big name in the mafia, and he moves to Los Angeles. And he starts operating there and becomes one of the biggest cocaine dealers in the entire state of California. So now Charlie shows up at OJ's house and he says, hey, you have this debt, and Joey wants it paid. Once again, we don't know. We don't know if the debt's real. We don't know if OJ ran it up. We don't know if Nicole and Faye ran it up. But either way, Charlie's there saying, hey, there's this debt. Joey wants his money. According to most people that talk about this theory, they say that Charlie shows up that day and he tells OJ that Nicole has been running up a huge debt in cocaine sales that Joey's been supplying her. Nicole and Faye Resnick have been running around town, getting coke all the time, haven't been paying for it, and Joey Ippolito wants his money from OJ. So that's what we're going to go with, okay? Nicole has been running up this debt. She's been running around doing drugs with Faye Resnick. And now Charlie is showing up at OJ's door saying that Joey Ippolito wants his money from OJ. But meanwhile, it's just because his ex-wife, Nicole, is running out there and doing drugs all over the place. Charlie tells OJ, like, listen, this is some serious shit. Joey Ippolito is not somebody to fuck with. Do not play around. He wants his money. And I think he may have, like, kind of indicated to him, like, we're gonna her if you don't do something about this. Like, you might want to take care of this because it's not going to be pretty if we have to. Now, OJ is supposed to leave for the airport in less than an hour. He's supposed to head to Chicago, but he's got Charlie on his doorstep, and he is pissed. He decides that he's going to go confront Nicole right then and there. He grabs Charlie, they jump into the white Bronco, and they speed off to Nicole's house on Bundy Drive. They arrive and they park the car in the alley behind Nicole's home. And Simpson and Charlie get out of the Bronco and head towards Nicole's front door. What happens next is brutal and swift. A gruesome scene that shatters the peace of the neighborhood, probably forever. I don't know how you come back from something like this. In the infamous book called If I Did It, OJ talks about how he and Charlie went to Nicole's house to confront her. He says that he had a knife that he always kept in his car, and that he grabbed it before he approached the house, and that Charlie took the knife away when he saw OJ carrying it. He says that he ran into Ron and he gets mad. He's like, what the hell are you doing at my ex-wife's house? And Ron is like, hey, I'm here. I'm delivering these glasses. Somebody left them at the restaurant. But apparently OJ is not satisfied with this answer. And he says that the fact that he's there to deliver glasses is immaterial. And that's OJ looking back on it a few years later. I think it was 10 years after the murders that he decided to write this book. So he's pretty much saying 10 years later, he's like, I don't really care why he was there. I'm just pissed that there's a man in the front of this house right now. He says that a fight broke out between he and Ron, and Nicole came out to check out what the hell was going on because she heard a huge commotion outside. OJ is asking Nicole, who is this guy? Why is he here? And as him and Nicole are fighting back and forth, she's volleying back at him. She's like, this is my house. Get the fuck out of it. It is none of your business who this guy is. I don't care if I'm having him come over for a one-night stand. This is none of your business. Why are you here? This is my house. It has nothing to do with you. Get the fuck out of here. Now, Nicole's saying this is my house and it's none of your business who's here. That irks OJ because he's been running around all this time talking so much shit about how much money he's given her. And Nicole doesn't have a job. She's a stay-at-home mom, and OJ finances her. In 1992, she sued OJ, and she won $500,000, which ended up being around $433, I believe, that she actually got, probably paid the rest out to a lawyer, and she also got an additional $10,000 per month in child support. So according to OJ, this is his house. He pays for this house. He worked for the money that pays for this house, and if there's a man standing in front of it, he deserves to know who that man is, why he's there, and honestly, there should never be a man there in the first place, period, because this is OJ's house. But as far as Nicole is concerned, that's not true. She won that money in the lawsuit. She takes care of his kids, and everybody has to pay child support. that sounds like a you problem, bro. So they're going back and forth, and that's why this is getting so heated. Now, remember when I was talking about Robert Kardashian and how he had set up a plan with William Wasz to take Nicole out? One of the main gripes and the reason that he wanted to have Nicole taken out was because she was costing him $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 a month, and she wasn't doing anything. She's running around, she's having an affair. In reality, she just had a relationship. But in their minds, she's having an affair with this football player, and the football player is a prodigy of OJ's, and how dare she do this when she's living off the money that she's sucking out of OJ? So that's just a little backstory of why this thing got so heated and just became a pressure cooker in this situation. OJ's pissed about this money that supposedly she's run up in cocaine debt. He shows up, there's a dude standing there, and on top of that, OJ's causing a scene, and this dude won't leave. He's standing there, and he's not leaving. He's telling OJ, go fuck yourself. I'm not going anywhere. Do something about it. Because Ron can fight. Remember, he is a black belt. He is not scared of this dude, and OJ's not used to that. OJ is a big dude. And on top of that, he's got a very commandeering personality. He's very intimidating, and he's used to people cowering away. So the fact that Ron can fight, he's a black belt, and he is not stepping down to him, it's just escalating things even worse. During the famous Fox News interview that OJ did when he was trying to promote the book If I Did It, OJ says, word for word, as things got heated, I just remember Nicole fell and hurt herself. And this guy kind of got into a karate thing. And I said, well, you think you can kick my ass? And I remember I grabbed the knife. I do remember that portion, taking the knife from Charlie. And to be honest, after that, I don't remember, except I'm standing there and there's all kinds of stuff around. The interviewer asks, what kind of stuff? Because, what? And he responds, blood and stuff. At this point, he laughs about the fact that he broke character and they have to back up again so that he can talk in hypothetical terms, because he keeps saying things like, oh, I remember that this happened. I do remember that that happened. He's giving a full confession on live television. This is wild. Not live television, that's a lie. This was a recorded segment, and actually it didn't end up coming out when it was made, but it's with Fox News. This is no joke. This is a serious interview, and he's laughing like, oh, I messed up again. I told it like it was a memory and not a hypothetical, because it is a memory, but we're pretending it's hypothetical, so let's rewind. He keeps slipping into, this is what happened, this is what I remember, when it's supposed to be, if I did it, this is what would have happened. And that was kind of the whole way that he wrote this book was, oh, if I were to do it, this is probably what I would have done. But it was very, very, very clearly a confession. But if OJ is scared for the lives of the people that he loves, his son, his daughter, he's got a lot of kids. He's scared that if he comes forward and tells the truth about what happened, I don't even think he's scared to go to prison, honestly. I really don't. I think that he is way more scared about what Joey Ippolito will do to his family, to his friends, to everybody that he knows and loves if he comes forward. And even this interview, even this book, it's walking a very, very fine line of telling the truth, pretty much giving a live confession, but being able to backtrack and saying oh, no, I never said it was the truth, man. I was joking. I was lying. I was saying this is what I would have done if, but it's very clearly fact. And he keeps doing it. The entire interview, he keeps saying, oh, I remember doing this. I remember parking here. I remember doing that. And that's not something that somebody does unless they're talking about a memory. This entire interview is absolutely wild. If you've never seen this interview, go watch it. It is a crazy, crazy watch. And he's just stated to this interviewer, the journalist that works for Fox News, he has just stated to her, I remember taking the knife from Charlie, and then I don't remember, but I remember standing there and there was blood everywhere. He started the interview off by saying, I'm going to tell you a story you've never heard before, because no one knows the story the way I know it. It takes place on the night of June 12th, 1994, and it concerns the murders of my ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her young friend, Ron Goldman. Forget everything you think you know about that night, because I know the facts better than anyone. The story you know or think you know, that's not the story. Not even close. this is one story the whole world got wrong. The interviewer that's questioning him, Judith Regan, asks him, "You write about removing a glove before taking the knife from Charlie?" And he responds, "I had no conscious memory of doing that, but obviously I must have because they found the glove there." Regan says, "Then you see bloody footprints and decide to take off." OJ responds, "Yes. Actually, I believe Charlie kept saying, 'We gotta get out of here.'" Now, to be clear, I've mentioned multiple times throughout this series that I fully believe that it was OJ Simpson that killed Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman. I've said that from the very beginning, but I've also said that I would present all the facts from all of the theories that I have kind of fell upon over and over and over again. When I say that I believe that it was OJ that killed these two, that's the story that I fully believe. I don't know how anybody in their right mind could watch this Fox News interview where Simpson literally confesses and talks about how he and Charlie killed these two people and not believe with 100% conviction, just as he said, that he and Charlie did it. Charlie was arrested with him in the robbery. Charlie took the stand in 2008 and testified that he and OJ were good friends. Charlie is a proven employee of Joey Ippolito and also a 5-time felon. Charlie is the name that OJ used in the book, If I Did It, as the person that was with him on the night of the murders. And OJ literally gives us the entire story. Remember, when someone is trying to tell you about themselves, believe them. And now, as I said earlier in the series, don't get me wrong here. I am not sitting here saying that Charlie is some hardened killer, a badass, scary dude. OJ talks about how he had to shake him because he was having a full-blown panic attack as they were leaving. He, literally fell apart crying and shit. And don't get me wrong, I would too. If I was there, I would lose my goddamn mind. But if anybody here is the hardened killer that walks around flouncing the fact that he committed and then got away with murder, it's OJ. Yes, Charlie was there, but he is far from a criminal mastermind or a hardened criminal. The dude just kind of seems like a joke, honestly. Everything I've ever read on this guy is that he is a joke. Everything he says is a lie. I've read a lot of people saying that he's constantly saying things like, "Oh, can't talk about that," because he doesn't have any knowledge of things, but he wants to make it seem like he could, but he's just he can't talk to you about it, and you're just not important enough. And honestly, the guy just seems like kind of an asshole, so I don't really feel bad feeling the way I feel. I did kind of feel bad because honestly, when I first started looking into this, I did believe it was Jason. That's why if you notice in the first episode or two, I kept saying things like, well, Jason could have taken the car. Jason could have looked like OJ from behind. Jason could have this, that. I honestly did think it was Jason. But even when I thought it was Jason, I wasn't trying to go too hard at Jason because I've never heard or seen anything that says that Jason's an asshole, Jason's anything. I just think he's the son of someone that did a really bad thing. But Charlie, I don't think I've read one good thing about Charlie. I don't know Charlie, I never met him, but everybody that I've listened to or read about or read excerpts from that has met him does not have nice things to say, and that makes me not feel so bad about 100% knowing in my heart. I can't convince you that this is definitely what happened, but in my heart, I 100% believe that this is what happened. I fully believe that OJ tried to get William Wasz to kill Nicole 6 months earlier. When it went bad with William Wasz, because he realized that he was being set up to be the patsy in this whole thing, OJ moved on, and then 6 months later, she did something else that pissed him off, and he went to her house and killed her. At the end of the day, though, Charlie went to OJ's house that day to collect money for Nicole's coke debt on behalf of Joey Ippolito, and he walked away that night the accomplice of a double murder, which is just wild. Imagine being put in that scenario. I know that would never happen to me. I'm 100% confident in the fact that I would never in a million, billion, trillion years get caught up in that situation. However, when you're a 5-time convicted felon and you're working for Los Angeles' largest coke dealer and you're going around collecting on coke debts, you kind of put yourself in the situation where things like this may happen. I don't know. I didn't make the rules, man. But I fully believe that OJ was there and took part in these murders. There was blood all over the place. It wouldn't make any sense at all to even try to think that OJ wasn't, at the very least, at the scene of the murder, at the very worst, the main and only killer, but somewhere in between the least and the worst is what I believe happened. He and Charlie worked together to commit this double homicide. How else would there be blood in OJ's house that nobody else had access to? On light switches, in the foyer, in the bathroom. And in the bathroom, it was in the sink, in the tub. It was all over his car. This man was there. Unless you're trying to say that every single piece of evidence that the police found was planted, which I do believe that some of it probably was placed there, but not all of it. And if you believe that not all of it was planted, you cannot believe anything other than OJ had his hands on those bodies. Remember when I was talking to you in the last part about the wackadoodle that was talking about how it was Ron's gay lover that actually did it? I told you guys that even though she was crazy, she was correct when she said that there was over 10 sets of fingerprints at the crime that didn't match Ron, Nicole, or OJ. There was blood on Nicole's back that didn't match any of them. There was animal hairs that didn't belong to any of them. Shoe prints at the scene that, again, didn't match anyone. There was blood on the steering wheel of the Bronco that didn't match any of them. If there wasn't a second person there, why would there be so much blood on the passenger seat of the Bronco? There was blood on the center console on the passenger side, which only happens if you're sitting in the passenger seat and have blood on you. It's not like, oh, maybe he reached around, no, someone was sitting in that passenger seat. And more than likely, it was OJ sitting there. I think I may have mentioned this already, but the original coroner that was brought on to look at all the facts of the case, Dr. Ron Goldman, when he looked at this crime scene, he said that morphologically speaking, there was definitely 2 different knives and 2 different types of stab wounds in both of these victims. Goldman was kicked off this case just 1 day after giving that report. Why? Because he claimed that there was 2 knives, indicating that there was 2 attackers. And the prosecution did not want to hear this. Anybody at all that was involved in this case on the side of the prosecution that indicated at all whatsoever that there was more than just OJ Simpson at the scene was immediately kicked off the case. But I don't for 1 second believe that OJ wasn't there. Why were his shoe prints at the scene of the crime? Why did he deny owning those shoes? And then a year after the criminal trial, pictures came out of him wearing those shoes that he said, I would never own these shoes. It's a little weird. He even said I'd never own those ugly ass shoes. They're ugly. And then literally a year later, a picture comes out of him wearing those shoes. Why would that happen? Because he was there. He just wasn't alone. Ron Goldman's family knew this, and they used that argument to get the only victory that anybody ever got against OJ, the civil case, which is the only place that it was ever argued that there were 2, not 1, but 2 killers at the scene of the crime. Charlie also wrote a book. The book was actually really similar to If I Did It, and it was called Juiced. And in this book, he pretty much agrees with every single thing that OJ said. There was only slight differences. One of the slight differences is in the book called Juiced, Charlie Ehrlich wrote that he came to OJ's house originally because he was coming on behalf of Joey Ippolito. He says that the reason that they went to Nicole's house was not actually to go after Nicole. The whole point of going to the house was actually to confront Faye. But they're way too similar for comfort. They both mention that the meeting initiated because of a drug debt. They both talk about Faye Resnick and how she's involved in why they're going to confront Nicole in the first place. And they both just kind of avoid the actual murders. Neither one of them goes on to say who did the stabbing or who did the fighting or anything. They both kind of stop at, we got into an argument and Ron Goldman did a karate thing. And then they go to the end when it's, oh, there's blood everywhere and these 2 people are dead. Which kind of lines up. I mean, I've heard a lot of times when you have somebody that isn't an actual killer, not a serial killer, not a mob hitman, not somebody that's used to killing, a lot of the times if they do something like that, they have no memory of it afterwards. So that's not uncommon at all. And I think the fact that the both of these guys came out with books and they both admitted to these murders is proof enough for you. They name each other in these books. One difference that I thought was interesting, though, is that in If I Did It, OJ doesn't mention Joey Ippolito. And I think that might be because he's scared of Joey Ippolito. That's why he never came forward in the first place. He tried by coming forward with If I Did It. he tried to get it out there like, hey, yeah, this is what happened. But Charlie did. Charlie specifically named Joey Ippolito, and I don't think that's a coincidence. Charlie was working for Joey Ippolito, and this shit is all real. Like, it's very clear, plain as day, right in front of our faces. In both of the books, they mention how OJ had a flight to make in an hour, and how this was kind of a rushed whim of the moment kind of thing because he knew he had to be on that flight. Charlie even came out after OJ died and reaffirmed the fact that he doesn't believe that OJ ever laid a hand on Nicole or Ron. And multiple times throughout the interview, he says, I wasn't there. I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know. But that's interesting because when you read about Charlie and the way that he is, I've seen a lot of people say things like, oh, he will say what he means, but then say, the fuck do I know? I mean, I do that a lot too. But him coming forward in an interview and saying, like, I know he didn't do it. I mean, I wasn't there. I don't know, but I know. I feel like it's a fact right in front of your face. And if you choose to ignore it, then you choose to not want to know the truth about what happened. I mean, and that's fine. That's totally fine. You don't have to dig into it and find out the truth. You know, there's plenty of people in the country that have looked into this, and you don't have to be one of them. But I fully believe that Charlie was there the night of these murders. And Charlie and OJ will tell you that themselves. And of course, Charlie can't come forward and admit to it, because if he does, he's going to jail. Nobody is going to go public and put themselves in jail for the rest of their lives. He was never charged with this murder. He was never found not guilty. OJ was. It was a lot easier for OJ to come out and write if I did it, because what are they going to do? Double jeopardy protects him. Even if he came out and said, yeah, I killed that bitch, there's nothing they can really do about it. But Charlie's never been even officially investigated from what I can see. So it makes sense that he would be a lot more secretive about the fact that he wrote this script. He would be a lot more secretive about his involvement in the crime. And even though he makes sure that he is a consistent presence when it comes to OJ, like he was there the night of the robbery, he came out when he died and made a statement about how he believed that OJ was innocent, yet when he did the robbery, he ended up getting off of the charges and was only sentenced to probation because he testified against OJ. But after OJ died, he came out and said, oh, that was my best friend, and I know for a fact he didn't do anything wrong. It's funny you weren't saying that in front of the jury when he was going to jail for 33 years, so, you know, whatever. So I want to go over this real quick before we end this episode. We're almost done. We only got a few more minutes left. But I do want to go over this because, to me, this is the most concrete evidence that there was somebody else there. I believe it was Charlie. Who knows if it was someone else? It could have been. It could have been somebody completely different. I think it was Charlie because they both came out and said it was Charlie. But either way you look at it, somebody else was there. And I'm going to talk to you about why I'm so certain of that fact. Now, remember when I talked to you guys about the FBI documents that came out this year? They came out in June of 2024. They are the first FBI documents to ever be released regarding the OJ Simpson case. They're just now being made available to the public because OJ's dead and why not? And in it, we could see a full breakdown of all the DNA evidence. This is huge because this is all the facts right in front of you. It's not just facts that have been cherry-picked through to make one side's argument or the other. It's a full breakdown of every piece of evidence that was provided, that was tested, and it's the conclusion of these DNA tests. I wanted to go through a few things that stood out on this paperwork to me. The first thing that I saw that made me start thinking that this was definitely related to something weird was when the report said that a light brown Caucasian head hair that is microscopically dissimilar to those found in specimen K1, which is Nicole's body, and K4, which is Ron's body, was found in the Q3, which is the glove, debris. This hair could not be associated to Ronald Goldman or Nicole Simpson, which is absolutely wild. Why is there some other white dude's hair inside of a glove that was used against OJ in this case? That glove that OJ tried on and if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit, that glove had somebody else's hair in it. And it couldn't have been OJ, and it couldn't have been Jason, because every time that there's a hair that's found to be associated with OJ, and they're 100% sure that that hair belongs to OJ, it's listed as an African American's hair. So it can't be. It has to be a white dude's hair. A direct quote from this FBI document, and the two next quotes I'm going to read are both on the same page. It says, "None of the bloody footwear impressions on the sidewalk depicted throughout Q48 through Q77 and Q105 through Q147 photographs were associated with the design of the K37 or K55/K56 footwear. The K55, K56 footwear is an impression of both the right and left shoe of OJ Simpson. So that's saying that there's a whole bunch of shoe prints here that are not matching OJ. Right below that, it says, the head hairs removed from or found in specimen Q149 through Q159 do not represent a suitable known hair sample. Therefore, these hairs could not be used as a standard for comparison with previously recovered hairs. Q149 through Q159 are discussing the hat that was provided to the crime lab. And it's on page 286 if you want to go check it out, but I'll put a picture right here. But if you're listening on the podcast and you want to go see for yourself, page 286 of the FBI documents. And they're right next to each other. Later on in this same report, on page 410, the crime lab sends over a report. On this report, OJ's hair is identified. He's labeled as K7, and hairs belonging to him are found at the scene. There's multiple hair fragments found that the lab lists as not suitable. And that's okay. That just means that they didn't have enough of that piece of hair to compare with his hair or any other person's hair. And that's okay. But Q19 clearly states that a hair is found, it is light brown Caucasian head hair, treated, and it is unlike any of the known DNA samples. OJ, Nicole, and Ron are all known samples, so this hair does not belong to any of them. Q25 lists a Caucasian limb hair and also does not belong to any of the known samples. I see a bunch of mentions of brown Caucasian hairs that are unlike K4, who's Goldman, and unlike K1, who's Nicole, most notably on and in the knit cap that was found at the scene of the crime and on Nicole's body. There's also multiple mentions of a reddish Caucasian hair that's found on multiple items of clothes and the knit cap. This reddish hair is all over the crime scene, and it's never really figured out why. Honestly, reading through this FBI report, you would have to be crazy to not believe that there was a second person present here with OJ. It's written all over this report. Unknown head hairs, limb hairs, fibers, shoe impressions, blood samples. They're all over the place. But the prosecution just doesn't bring it up, so nobody really knew about them. Until now, when the FBI finally released this paperwork on June 7th, 2024, 30 years after the murders. So that is why I fully believe that there was a second person there with him. I believe it was Charlie Ehrlich because Charlie Ehrlich said it was Charlie Ehrlich. And OJ said that Charlie was with him. The book mentions working for Joey Ippolito. Like, there's so many times that these men are both telling you this is what happens. And their stories align. They match up. It makes sense. It makes more sense that Charlie was there than that OJ went and did it by himself. Obviously, it's a little weird that when they found Ron's body, his entire hand was busted up. This man is a black belt. He knows how to fight. He fought somebody. And if his hand is busted up, that means that he put a beating on someone. But they arrested OJ the next day, and there's a whole lot of pictures out there of what OJ's face looked like the day after the murder. And not one mark is on his face. He does have a cut on his hand, but he doesn't have one mark on his face. How could that be possible? How could he have fought Ron to the death, and Ron's a black belt, and Ron has a busted up hand showing that he fought someone, and OJ doesn't have a mark on him? It makes no sense. Less than a month after Judith Regan did the interview with OJ, the one that was called, like, the Lost Confession, and he pretty much came out and confessed that he did it, she was called into Fox News' corporate offices and fired from her on-air journalist position. Fox News came out to the public and destroyed this woman, saying that they fired her because she had made inappropriate remarks against Jewish people. And she quickly became one of the most hated people in America. And people ate that shit up. Like, oh, this is a journalist that works for Fox News. Of course she's anti-Semitic. Of course she's racist. Of course she's biased. Of course she's a bigot. Blah, 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 blah. and she was outcast. In 2008, Regan sued Rupert Murdoch's News Corporation, which is the parent company of Fox News, for $100 million. Fox ended up settling with her, and it finally came out that she wasn't actually racist. She was just actually fired to stop her efforts to release this interview that she did with OJ. The Rupert Murdoch News Corporation made a statement saying, "After carefully considering the matter, we accept Ms. Regan's position that she did not say anything that was anti-Semitic in nature, and further believe Ms. Regan is not anti-Semitic." After the lawsuit was settled, Fox changed their stance pretty freaking drastically, pretty quick. Before she sued them, it was that she was this bigot, she hated Jews, and she was racist. But now that she sued, they made that statement, and they also made another statement saying that Ms. Regan is a talented publisher who created many award-winning and best-selling books during her 12 and a half years at the company. News Corp thanks Ms. Regan for her outstanding contributions and wishes her continued success. So, quite the 180 there, Fox. I think I mentioned this earlier, but there's also a lot of talk about the Time magazine article that was supposed to come out. It was slated to come out, and they pulled it off production 10 minutes before it hit the presses. And it was all about how William Wasz had stalked Nicole, how Paula Barbieri's car had been stolen, and how he had been stalking Nicole in this car. The notebook that was found, all kinds of stuff that supported this theory was being written into a Time magazine article that was pulled 10 minutes before it was published. So it makes sense that Judith Regan was outcast when she tried to get this explosive, pretty much confession that she did with OJ. She tried to get it out there, and when she wouldn't stop, they just fired her and said that she was a racist, and people believed them. And I would assume that it made Fox News look good to say this as well. We all know that Fox News is very well known for being biased, for being racist, conservative. Everybody has heard those rumors, and the way that they talk is very conservative and biased. So I'm sure it looked really good for Fox News to come out and say, like, oh, we don't tolerate bigotry or racism, and that's why we had to fire her, but she wasn't taking that laying down. But at the end of the day, it makes sense that these journalistic ventures that are being attempted are being cut off at the knees because you got Robert Kardashian, who doesn't want any of this shit to come out. And even after Robert Kardashian died, there's a whole Kardashian family that is probably some of the most famous human beings on the planet that don't want it coming out that their father conspired to kill Nicole and Ron, because OJ died with the entire world hating his guts because of this murder. So if it ever was confirmed that Robert Kardashian had a part in it, helped cover it up, it would look really bad for the Kardashian family. So to this day, there's so many news articles, stories that haven't ever gotten out there because they're threatened with lawsuits, they're threatened with legal action. And really the only way that you can hear these stories is when you listen to like small time YouTube people that people like the Kardashians will never, ever, ever find out about. Therefore, they'll never go after. So if you want to know the truth, just go find somebody that isn't scared of the Kardashian family because they know that the Kardashian family will never know who they are. Johnny Cochran, one of OJ's main lawyers, hinted that drug dealers may have killed Nicole to intimidate her friend, Faye Resnick, who was addicted to cocaine and had a lot of cocaine debt. But DNA evidence seemed to overwhelmingly point to Simpson's guilt, which made the theory seem irrelevant, so they really didn't go down that avenue. On multiple occasions, Charlie has talked about meeting Simpson at his Rockingham estate while he was working for Joey Ippolito, which is what led to their friendship. There's confirmed phone calls between Joey Ippolito and OJ Simpson's house. The William Wasz thing is confirmed on paper. It happened. According to Charlie, Ippolito used Simpson for his connections, even though Simpson wasn't directly involved in the drug dealing. Instead, Ippolito supported Simpson to facilitate these deals, so Simpson would send people over his way and cover their debts if they weren't good for it. So pretty much he was like a financial backer. The clothes and the murder weapon that Simpson wore that night seemed to have vanished into thin air. Most people believe that Robert Kardashian is the one that was responsible for disposing of this evidence. In Simpson's book, he mentioned that he left the Bronco with Charlie on Bristol Avenue, which would explain why the limo driver, Alan Park, didn't see the Bronco when he pulled up, even though there's tons of evidence against him and he kind of confesses to what actually happened in the book. Simpson still says that he avoids LA because he fears running into the real killer. And honestly, I truly believe that Simpson has warped his brain so much that he doesn't think it was him. He thinks that he did it, it was his body, but it was because of Joey Ippolito. Joey Ippolito forced him to kill Nicole. He sent Charlie after him. He was trying to extort him for a shit ton of money. There was no other outcome but what happened, and it's all because of Joey Ippolito. So it kind of makes sense to me when he says that he fears running into the real killer, because if he ran into Joey Ippolito after writing If I Did It, he might get punched in the face. Much worse may happen. OJ Simpson died recently on April 10th, 2024 at 76 years old, which I'm sure is big news to you guys. Realistically speaking, everybody knows unless you've been under a rock. But he died after being diagnosed with prostate cancer, which had been reported earlier this year. But honestly, it's kind of been closed-lipped. Like, they haven't really talked about his death very much. His family shared the news that he died on Twitter and pretty much just asked for privacy. And they made a statement saying that he was surrounded by his children and his grandchildren. During the time of this transition, his family asks you to please respect their wishes for privacy and grace. Back in February 2024, when reports came out that Simpson had been diagnosed with prostate cancer and was undergoing chemotherapy, he kind of denied those rumors. That report said that he was currently in hospice care, but he denied that. He said, "I'm not in hospice." He made a video and posted it on Twitter, and he pretty much laughed it off. He was like, "Hospice? Hospice? You talking about hospice?" He didn't directly address his cancer diagnosis, but he did say, "I'm not in hospice, you friggin' idiots." Simpson is survived by his children and his grandchildren, who were with him in his final moments. Their statement reflects their wish to handle his passing with dignity and privacy. Now, Simpson's legacy is complicated. He was celebrated for his sports achievements, but also vilified for his legal troubles. His death marks the end of a life that was both highly publicized and deeply controversial. A poll was taken in 2016 that asked the same question of the African American community as was asked before the trial. Do you believe that OJ Simpson was innocent? As opposed to the 20% who said that they were innocent at the time of the murders, in 2016, the public's opinion had changed pretty drastically. Now, over 50% of African American people that were polled believed that he was actually guilty of these murders. It makes sense why. In today's day and age, where DNA evidence is so much more understood and believed and trusted than it was back then, and after we've all gotten a chance to watch all the documentaries, read all the books, hear all the rumors, do our own internet research, and plus the infamous If I Did It book and the Fox News interview, it's not really a question of why the opinions would change so drastically. It makes sense. It also didn't help that OJ went and robbed that sports memorabilia dude in the hotel at gunpoint. Not so great. And also that race relations have taken huge leaps and bounds since the days of those trials. Even though they're nowhere near where they should be, they're a lot better than they were in 1994. So after all this evidence has been presented, after we've gone through virtually every theory that's ever been posed, where do you stand? What do you think? Did OJ do it? Or was it his son? Was it the mafia? Was it Robert Kardashian, a drug dealer? Or was it OJ? Or was it OJ and Charlie, like I believe? Let me know in the comments. I'd really love to discuss this with you guys. And if you're still here, I really appreciate you guys hanging in here with me. This has been a 5-part series, and as cool as it was to look into, I'm so happy that it's over. Also, if you're still here, in the comments, let me know how many of these episodes you watched, or how much of the episodes you watched. I know there was a lot of them, and I really hope you guys enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed looking into it and making the videos. Thanks so much for watching. Join me next week as I continue to delve into the lives and legacies of some of the most fascinating and infamous gangsters in history. As I mentioned in the beginning of the series, way back in the beginning of the series, my next gangster is going to be the Gemini twins, who are out of jail and walking around free now. So don't forget to tune in next week. On your way out, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, follow, comment, do all the things, and I'll see you next week. Bye.